and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Questions series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. This week, we are joined by a special guest and a good friend in FPL Hibbo. Hibbo, welcome. But first, Pras, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Another week of me being on holiday with limited viewing experience. So apologies if I've missed some nuggets, but excited to be back and very excited to co-host our friend Hibbo. And for those who may not know, I mean, a lot of you will, but Hibbo has been on Twitter for 3 years. Used to write a excellent thread called "Breaking the Template" at Hub. But most recently at Scout, we're very excited to have him, and he'll be writing the very marquee Captain Sensible article, which is something that I read pretty much every week, and especially weeks like this where you're deciding between two important players. So, welcome, Hibbo. We've known each other for over 5 years at Scout forums, at Nirvana, and now on Twitter. So it's a pleasure to actually stream with you for the first time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on the show. So, no, it's a special moment because I know we're good friends in the kind of FPL space, and this is the first time chat these face to face. So I've known you for about 5 years, Pras, and I know Andy for just over a year. But I just wanted to say before we get started, just hands on heart, that Burning Questions was the best new show in the FPL content space last season, and I think you were both fantastic signings by Scout, and I think your success is very well deserved.
Thank you, my man. I mean, Scout has done well to get good people on board, which is true for Andy and yourself. And it's good to do this. And hopefully, now that you're writing for Scout, we'll see you a lot more. So it's a pleasure to get started, and let's get going, Andy.
Yeah, let's get going because the first thing I did was accidentally have Baker's handle up there. Sorry, Hibbo, but it's changed.
Have you changed it now?
I did change it, but is this handle correct? Hibbo_FPL?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Oh, because last week I got it wrong as well. So apologies, guys. No excuses. But anyways, locked and loaded this week. We've got a very special episode. We're making some transfers. Both I think Pras and I are on hits. Hibbo not so much, but we'll get to our teams at the end. We'll go through sort of game week 3 to 8 fixture ticker. 8 being the final game week before the international break. And I'm sure there's a lot of content out there about sort of this period in time, but we'll sort of go through it, pick out some teams, pick out some players from certain teams, and then we'll talk through some key dilemmas, some burning questions. And then Hibbo has some great stuff on captaincy. So I know a lot of people are sort of deciding between the likes of Jesus and Salah as well as Haaland. So very interested to hear what you say, Hibbo, about captaincy as well. So without further ado, let's begin. First, quick plug, guys. This is your last chance to get last year's pricing for Fantasy Football Scout. It's $2.49 a month billed annually, and it's going up to $2.99 after the deadline on Saturday. So last chance this week to get the pre-season prices. Okay. I'm going to have to change your handle again, so bear with me.
That's okay. Why don't we get started while you do that?
It's good to go. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so first things first, we have the fixture ticker from game week 3 to 8. As you can see, there's some shifts from the original teams you've had in game week 1. A lot of us were not loaded up, but have players from Aston Villa, Wolves, and Newcastle, and now they're at the bottom of the fixture ticker. And then at the top of the fixture ticker, now you have Brighton, Brentford up there. And it's very interesting because Brighton have played really well the first 2 game weeks. So a lot of changes in the next, not many changes, but a lot of shifts in the next 6 game weeks. So, this is just 6 game weeks because it's the international break after 8. But if you want to break it down to look for even shorter term punts, for example, right until Champions League, Pras and I did episode 1 on wildcard timing. So you can check that out for sort of different times to wildcard as well. So anything do you notice from here initially, Pras?
Look, I think firstly, the window we've chosen is because going back to our first game week 1 video, we think, you have to sort of try to hold on until game week 9 if you can. Obviously, if there's issues in your team, go for an earlier wildcard. So this is like it's a crossroads game week because a lot of people are, either looking to restructure, major restructurings, and we'll come to my team, for example. I made 3 transfers. Some are looking pretty nice because things have played out in a way where they made some 50-50 decisions and they worked out, like going for Haaland game week 1, having a Diaz and not a Nunes. So those are things that worked out. But if you look at this 6 game week window, this is what will answer our questions on who should you like to have until you wildcard, if that is the base case. And so, look, nothing really stands out in addition to the fact that, again, the good teams have good fixtures. So Arsenal, you continue to hold until game week 8. Don't think about your triple up. Man City are 4th in the ticker. They would have you back them to win any game, but when they have easy fixtures, that's just you have to double down either in attack or in defense. Chelsea, again, very high on the ticker. And Liverpool are in the middle, but that's probably because Man United is a red here, and it probably shouldn't be a red. So nothing more to add there. I think people already knew that Villa are short-term punts. People know that Wolves are okay until game week 6. So that's where we are. And I guess the only last one is Newcastle. People punted on Trippier for the first 2 game weeks. I think it worked out really well. But now they're thinking, can we go different? Can we go somewhere else? Even though you can have a rotation with an Andreas Pereira.
Hibbo, I want to put you on the spot straight away. Is there a way you view fixtures generally? I guess what increments of fixtures do you look at? Or are you more of a short-term, long-term sort of fixture looker? What's your go-to when it comes to fixtures? Worded that really wrong.
No, you worded it fine. So whenever I'm looking at setting up my kind of starting team in FPL, I might think about a horizon of, mostly I'm thinking, when am I going to play the first wildcard? So I might be thinking about generally setting my team up for the first 8 weeks. The general ambition is to set it up so that it's solid. I'm not taking too many punts of things that could potentially go wrong. So like if we're looking at starting teams and parts of the template that are starting to creak a bit, we can see that the punts like Bailey and Neto are the ones that are starting to let the template down a wee bit. So I think limiting those at the start, but kind of going forward, I kind of look sometimes at blocks of kind of 3 game weeks. I think sometimes it's okay to look a wee bit short term because otherwise you lose out on opportunities if you maybe look too long term, if you know what I mean. Like I think at the minute, if we look at Spurs, I think Spurs they're jumping on the page now with fantastic fixtures. They've got Wolves, Forest, West Ham and Fulham, so over the next 4, I think they're particularly appealing, and I don't think many people are talking about Spurs at the moment.
Yeah.
No. You're absolutely right. I think breaking it up and the other things to watch out for, people should know this, but just to point out, game week 5 will be a midweek game week, so that basically means that you can expect some rotation. You may have some visibility by game week 4, but then game week 5 should have, all the rotation proof assets that we have may not be as rotation proof as we think in game week 5. And then obviously Champions League starts after game week 6. So that's something to kind of think about.
Yeah, I feel like rotation is quickly approaching us. So it may be good to sort of get into 5 and 6 with 2 free transfers and sort of be able to maneuver and adapt when that time does come. The next thing we'll look at is provided by... One second. Oh, God. Apologies, guys. Okay, perfect. Provided by FPL Chase. And FPL Chase is a beloved member in the community and, really, really good with his charts and visuals. And what we have here is predicted clean sheets and predicted goals. And conveniently, he's done game week 3 to game week 8 as well. And so what you see in for example, Liverpool 0.44 is that it's a 44% chance of them getting a clean sheet in game week 3. So total, you expect 3.2 clean sheets basically 3 clean sheets out of the next 6 games. So a good chart to go alongside sort of what you want to see in terms of fixtures. So anything that stands out to here for both of you guys? I mean, it's pretty obvious the strong teams have the highest chance of clean sheets. You can see Brighton is up there in number 7 with possibility of 2 clean sheets out of 6. So bodes well for Sanchez. Arsenal 2.5. So maybe Ramsdale, nicks 2 or 3 clean sheets in between. So a good way to predict, but obviously predictions are just predictions for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, this is the alternative fixture ticker. Essentially, if you want to look at it, it's the attacking fixture ticker because it gives you how many goals do you expect or how many clean sheets do you expect these teams to keep. And it also should kind of temper expectations. So if you have a Brighton keeper, for example, Brighton are expected to keep 2 clean sheets in the next 6 game weeks as a base case. So let's not kind of expect good fixtures means 4 or 5. That's basically out of the norm. This is essentially 2 would be right, anything less would be bad luck, and anything more would be good luck. So that's that helps us calibrate where we think our teams are. And one thing stands out is look at Leicester. So people who are on the Warden Iverson train, yes, it saves you a 0.5 or a 1 million. They're expected to have 1 clean sheet over the next 6 game weeks. So don't be afraid if you've sort of gone for that structure and you think I have some money, I don't really have a transfer to make. Go for it. I mean, change your keeper if you have to. I have an FPL rule that I don't make keeper transfers until first game week. This is sort of things that you need to adapt when you look at things like this.
Nice. How about yourself, Hibbo? Do you anything you notice here?
Yeah, well, the one thing that stands out when I look at both these charts, so if I'm looking at, say, projected goals and I'm looking at projected clean sheets, and I suppose what I've observed in the first 2 game weeks is that Everton are very low for both projected goals and projected clean sheets. Now, I think at the minute, Everton are a team to target. Now, I know there's been a bit of chatter in the community and people are talking about alternative options in the 5.5 million midfield space. And Gray's been one that's come up. I don't think Gray scored a goal in about 1,000 minutes of football. So I'm not sure we'll be investing in any Everton assets at the minute. I know they're going to bring Cody into the defence, but I don't trust them. And in fact, I will be looking to target them if completely possible. And I think people are looking at Everton's fixtures and saying, look, they actually have quite a decent run. But I think it's better for the teams that they're playing against. Like you're looking against Nottingham Forest, Brentford and Leeds. Like Brentford and Leeds will fancy those as home games against Everton.
Yeah, I think additionally, another thing I really like about utilizing charts like this is sort of breaking it down into the individual game weeks. So, for example, a lot of us have Trippier, right? First 2 game weeks, great 7-pointers, I believe. And this game week obviously doesn't bode well. But for example, if you can rotate him out, you can always use him in game week 4, where he has a much higher chance of a clean sheet as well as game week 6. So, a good way to sort of box out certain individual single game weeks on top of the overall grand scheme of 6 game weeks clean sheets percentage. Okay, and again, this is by FPL Chase on Twitter. This is projected goals. So Man City, for example, are expected to score 14.2 goals in the next 6 game weeks, which is pretty absurd. And you can see that, for example, game week 5, there's a possibility they score 3.2 goals in that game. So another good indication of sort of how many goals a team will score. And obviously we see Man City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea near the top, including Manchester United, which is very interesting. And then Wolves at the bottom, as predicted, certainly. So anything you see here, I'll go to you first, Hibbo.
Which is this again? Sorry, Andy.
Oh, sorry. Maybe you can't see it, but it's projected goals. If you can't see it, I'll go to Pras first. Pras.
No, the projected goals I have Chase's Twitter page up here now. So I think it's fairly familiar. Like we're looking at the top, it's good teams score goals. Like so you're looking at Man City, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal, and Chelsea. And then towards the bottom, to be expected, Bournemouth seem to lack threat. Wolves look to be kind of fairly toothless in attack. Everton have been playing without a striker, and then Fulham, I suppose, are fairly reliant on Mitrovic. So I think this is fairly reflective of team standard, really.
From my side, there's a couple of things that I had as observations. So there's a dichotomy here where Liverpool are expected to keep more clean sheets than Man City in the next 6 game weeks. Man City are expected to score more goals than Liverpool. But if you look at the trend of transfers, and I am one of those, people are selling the Liverpool defender to get a Liverpool attacker, and they're doubling up on the Man City defense. Now, that doesn't mean both are bad because they're both second, but it basically comes down to X minutes. If we had a more nailed option at Man City, and maybe Foden is one, we don't know yet, but if we had one, then they are clearly superior to a Diaz. But then you have to take into account game state or what's happening around the stats, right? And this is where our observations, this is why we have people who watch the games, who are following what's happening with transfers, with what's happening in the game. That's where a Nunes red card, for example, becomes important for a Diaz. That's where an injury to a Thiago Silva or form of Fernandinho becomes important for a Robertson. None of them have become bad. They just go from the best to the second best. So that's what we're talking. It's fine margins, but that's something that stood out. And the second thing that stands out in these charts is it's amazing that we can get to the top 5 attacking teams and the top 5 defensive teams fairly easily with the pricing.
Yeah.
You don't have to go down and take a punt on a team at the bottom half or the bottom 10 of this projected goal. So who is in the bottom 10? Aston Villa, Leeds, West Ham, Southampton, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle. Now, I see some people saying, I'm going to go Bailey to Almiron or, somebody else from Newcastle, or I'm going to go Rodrigo. Now, they may be fine. They may work out. But what I'm saying is if you really are going for a Leeds attacker, they are going to score as a team 7 goals in the next 6 game weeks. Whereas if you go for a Liverpool attacker, they're not the same price, I understand. But you have to compare this in terms of if you go for a structure which does not have any Leeds players, you're essentially getting points from these best teams who will either get clean sheets or get the goals. So I think something to think about where you can actually afford players from these top 5 teams who are highest in goals to be scored and highest in goals or fewest goals that they will concede. The other thing is, so far, first 2 game weeks, who are the teams that have disappointed? It's basically teams that are outside this top 5. You could argue that, some Spurs players have disappointed, whether that's Perisic or Son or Kane in game week 1. Kane came through, but it's the Leeds guys. It's the Aston Villa guys. It's, whoever went for Aronson or Bailey or Neto. These are the guys who disappointed. But yet I see that the biggest transfer wagons are for, again, teams that are not in the top 5. So you have the, Brighton guys, you have Leeds guys. They may work out, as I said, but just be wary. How many goals are you really expecting in the next few weeks? Is that worth it? Or do you think a restructuring will make it better and you sort of go for the defender and another attacker from these top 5 teams?
Hibbo, anything to add here?
The one thing that I will add is that data's always kind of retrospective looking. And so Chase's sheets, I love them to bits, but then I think you have to kind of add a bit of context yourself. And if we're looking at Liverpool at the minute, they started Matt Phillips the other night. So they do have a wee bit of weakness at centre back. Now, I know Joe Gomez is going to come in, but that's never going to be considered in kind of future predictions. So we have to be mindful of the squad the teams are playing with at the minute too. I think Pras makes a great point about Luis Diaz and the Darwin red card. I think Darwin's been soaking up a lot of big chances for Liverpool, and they have to go somewhere, and they're not going to go to Firmino. So I would imagine we're going to see Salah and Luis Diaz coming more to the fore in the coming weeks.
Yeah, maybe let's transition to teams then.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, shout out again to FPL Chase. His charts were made after 2 game weeks, so limited data, but thank you for that. So what we'll do is sort of, look at this fixture ticker and go through some teams, not every single team, but I guess we'll start with Brighton, top of the fixture ticker from 3 to 8, with 3 home games and 3 away games. So in the last 2, again, limited data, but last 2 fixtures, Brighton XG versus Man United was 1.65, Man United 1.20. Brighton versus Newcastle XG was 1.55 versus 0.18. So very, very attacking a game, this previous game against Newcastle. Brighton third in terms of XG open play, 5th XG behind Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, and 3rd defensive XG behind Man City and Brentford. Again, limited data, so take it for what it is, and different, teams, different matchups. Just off the glance, players to target. You got Sanchez in goal, maybe Dunk as a defensive option. I believe he's 4.5. You got Gross, now priced at 5.6, but he is top of all mids in terms of XG and XGI, and also very likely to be on penalties. You've also got Trossard at 6.0, and I did mess around with him a bit. He seems to be playing multiple positions, and actually, when he plays multiple positions, he gets his best returns under Potter. So very interesting, but he does come off almost every game around the 70th minute mark. So not sure if I would go there. There is a Tom Freeman article on Trossard, so do give that a read if you have some interest in him. And, another striker that is interesting is Welbeck. I think Welbeck has looked pretty decent, pretty threatening, but The problem is they're not really scoring. So are we sort of being deceived by the stats here? What do we think about Brighton assets? I know a lot of people are on Gross already, and for a good reason. They have great fixtures moving forward. So yeah, I'll start with you, Hibbo.
Well, like looking at the first couple of games, I think Gross has been fairly advanced, and he's produced the biggest numbers for Brighton. So I think he's had 4 shots, 3 big chances, and he scored 2 goals in the first 2. But the data has been inflated by the tie against Manchester United for me, because the 2 goals he scored were 2 big chances. I don't think he'll score 2 easier goals in his life. I would be a bit wary of him. I think he's priced himself out of the conversation as a replacement for Neto and Bailey because he's risen to 5.6 firstly. But I know we're going to talk later on. And if we're talking FPL meta, anybody that's playing, say, a 4-4-2 where they've got Salah, Luis Diaz, Neto, or Bailey, they could maybe transition to having an extra defender rather than replacing to somebody like Gross. I think that's what we would call optimal, I suppose.
That's an excellent point. I was going to make this as well, that don't compare. So if you filter down any midfielder under 8 million, he stands out, right? I don't think there's anything denying that. Good fixtures. He's looked advanced, as you mentioned. There is a little bit of threat from now that they have signed a left back. It may not happen immediately, but Trossard may move up. He could take Lallana's position, but it's something that will change in terms of how they play. But look, Gross is a good option. There's nothing against him. The problem is if there was a better midfielder at 7 million, 7.5 million, people would have sort of gravitated towards that instead of him. He's not talismanic. So I see in the comments, some people have made a suggestion that, look, if Brighton don't score enough goals, that shouldn't matter because it's, they will score some. And if he's getting the majority of them, then that's fine. But we have no data to say that he is a talismanic kind of player. Welbeck has been playing well. Trossard is actually quite actively involved in the attacks, and he takes the ball a lot more when he will move further up instead of playing left wing back. So these are things that we just don't know. And the question is Gross a good option? Yes. Is he better than a 5 million defender? Structurally, like you mentioned, Hibbo, my answer is no. So it's a question for people at 5 at the back. Do you want to... Then you have to sort of look at what is the price point and how do you restructure him, which was my issue. But if I had a 4 at the back, I wouldn't go to a Gross. I'd definitely go to a 5 million defender.
Yeah, I think you...
Yeah, because
Go ahead, Hibbo.
If we're looking at midfield, you've got Salah, Martinelli, and Luis Diaz, who really, I think they could be locks now. And a midfield, if you're playing like a 5-3-2, so people that are playing the 4-4-2 that have got Salah, Martinelli, Diaz, and saying Neto or Bailey, I think it's an easy switch.
Yeah,
there's options at that price point in the fence.
Yeah, I think Pras hit the nail on the head, right? When you're looking at an individual replacement for Gross at his price point, there's really not someone that stands out. I mean, for Bailey and Neto, there's not really someone that stands out. So we're all sort of gravitating towards Gross. But if you look at sort of combinations between which 5.0 defender can I get in order to get someone like a Diaz or Foden or Gundogan or even a Grealish, then the conversation becomes way different. So again, I think that when I looked at it at an individual transfer from Bailey to Gross, it was just not enticing enough for me to go there. Yeah.
So I think that's and I think Brighton defense is something we already know. So right, I mean they're a good defensive team. They work in a system. They haven't really. There's no signs yet that they're suffering from the Bissouma, the Cucurella sales or the Dan Burn sales. They have lost a lot of people, but it's a system team, and you will expect clean sheets to come. So I think people who went Sanchez, people who are thinking about Dunk, I think it's fair. There's no issue at all. They're predicted to keep 2 clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks, which is fine for that price. So no issues there. When we come to Leeds, we will compare Rodrigo with Gross, but at the moment, I think Gross is definitely a fine option.
Yep. Okay, let's move to the next team, which is second in the fixture ticker, Brentford. 3 home games, 3 away games again. Last 2 fixtures, Brentford, obviously a big win versus United, 4-0, 2.06 XG versus 0.68, and maybe an anomaly of a game, but it was a very dominating performance. Then you have Brentford versus Leicester. Brentford actually lower in XG 2-2, so mixed bag here. Players to target, maybe Ben Mee, Henry. In the midfield, you got Jensen, and also a new signing in Damsgaard. I know we've seen Damsgaard play in international competition. So I'm very interested to see how he adapts to the Premier League. And then up top, you've obviously got last year's two heroes in Mbumo as well as Tony. So I feel like I've seen some noise on Twitter about moving to Tony, and for good reason. I think he's a great shout as well. But Brentford, what do you see here, Pras?
So I'm a little split on Brentford. So let me elaborate. If you were wildcarding today, you get a Tony, because a Tony transitions to a Mitrovic very nicely, because you don't have this break of a wildcard later. If you don't have a wildcard, or you're not playing a wildcard this week, then I think you can stay away from a three forward line structure, because you don't really necessarily need to plump on Mitrovic immediately. Nunes was the guy who would have been a third striker, and people would have kind of gone for that. That's out of the window. So therefore, I think going for the Tony structure for non-wildcarders isn't there. He may do fine, but then there are other midfielders or defenders that could match. So that's the first thought on Brentford. A lot of people went De Silva early, and that became quite a controversy on Saturday night. I think it's fine. De Silva will continue to play, get minutes, even if he doesn't start. He's an attacking 4.5. You can't ask for more. It's probably the second best 4.5 mid in the game. So if you did that, knowing that Bailey is your 12th player and you're going down to a 4.5, absolutely fine. No issues with that whatsoever. My personal issue was why you're doing that before Chelsea, Spurs, Liverpool have played. And let's say if the red card was not Nunes but Salah, that changes everything. So you just ended up wasting a transfer on Saturday night. But let's not go there. It was all fine. People who went De Silva is all fine. I think Damsgaard will eventually take that spot. So he was very good for Denmark. He is a goal scorer. So let's have that conversation later. But again, if you're not starting De Silva, no issues. Defenders, I'm not going to go there. I mean, why would you go for Brentford defenders, even with good fixtures, when you have top 5 defenders that you can pick for 5 million, even 4.5 million defenders from Arsenal? So this is my issue. If you wanted to go cheap, go Nico Williams or Patterson at 4. Why would you spend 4.5? You shouldn't be having a Brentford defender starting every week.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Just on Tony again. He keeps ticking along. Throughout last season as well, a lot of us gave up on him, I guess, halfway through the season, and he kept getting those goals quite consistently. So, very, very enticing option at the striker price point. Hibbo, anyone interest you in Brentford, or anything you noticed about Brentford?
The key takeaway really was the Silva scored twice, and I think his XG tally was 0.07. So there was a certain element of luck, because De Gea really should have saved his effort. It's it crept under his body. I found the bandwagon on Saturday night a bit bizarre too, but obviously like yourself, Pras, because we had the Sunday games, they come, and the Monday games, they come. And one injury to a key big player who you have money tied up on, if you've got 2 transfers, you can then make a really aggressive attack and play. So people were running the risk. Just to make a bit of team value, it wouldn't really be for me. Now, my key takeaway is that Man United I know Pras won't like me saying this, I think Man United are about a team to target at the moment. In the very early stage, they're kind of 6th worst for expected goals conceded. Now, the sample is small, but they've played Brighton and Brentford, so I think Ten Hag's start has been difficult. And I think that what we're seeing with Man United is every kind of negative aspect, everything negative going on with the club at the minute is kind of manifesting itself on the pitch, and it mustn't be a great watch for Man United fans.
Yeah. How do you feel, Pras, as a United fan?
Look, it's a painful start, but it's very early to judge. It's a very good time to play Man United, as Hibbo mentioned, because things are not in place, right? There is fans unrest, and this is something pointed out by many, that there is going to be a protest at Old Trafford on Monday. So you lose 1 goal and the players start to panic. They start to panic, and Ten Hag kind of hasn't implemented his blueprint yet. He's not got the signings yet. So it is a little bit of a shit show. I mean, there's no hiding behind that. They're trying to play in a way where he's trying to get the players to pass out. De Gea can't pass. But look, I'm not going to go on a Man United rant. What I'll say from an FPL perspective is target Man United. So Liverpool fixture, I expect us to concede a few goals. I mean, this is where we are. Do I expect us to get it right? Absolutely. But it's going to take time. You remember that time when Klopp started and he was getting those centre backs, I forget who they were, to basically play out from the back, and it was a disaster. They also conceded goals like giving the ball away from in the penalty box, somebody basically pressing and getting the ball and scoring. That's what we're seeing. I mean, 2 of the goals were mistakes. In fact, all of the goals were mistakes, but the 2 of them were massive mistakes. Target Man United for now. Definitely not a team to have or own assets from. Sell Rashford if you have, sell Dalot if you went there, and get attackers from other teams. But it may change very quickly. One signing or 2 signings could make a difference in midfield.
Yeah, it's tough to read because that 4-0 was obviously a very unfortunate performance for Man United fans. But moving into this game week, this could bode as a big opportunity for Liverpool, or who knows, maybe they're able to shut them down somewhat. So you go to the easier fixture in Jesus, for example, for captaincy. So we'll get to it later. But I think that's enough on Brentford. Let's move to Arsenal. Arsenal, we're all loaded up on Arsenal. They look great. Jesus, obviously, fantastic 19-point performance. Shout out to those few that did captain him. That was amazing. They have great fixtures moving forward. We all knew this from the start of the season. I don't think there's much to talk about here except, probably a couple of burning questions about it. For example, if you don't have Martinelli or Jesus, what do you do? I know some people are loaded up on, Saka, Jesus, as well as Martinelli. So what do you do with Saka? First of all, do you triple up? So many questions, but what do you do for Martinelli and Jesus non-owners? Do you move on him ASAP, Hibbo?
You buy them. Sorry.
Jesus, if I didn't own Jesus, I think I would have bought him on Saturday night.
Yep.
It's like Martinelli is, and this isn't really coming under the kind of remit of like what we knew or what we didn't know, because we had a fair steer that Martinelli was going to be a really good option because we thought that Smith Rowe was fairly far off at the start of the season. So we knew Martinelli was going to get minutes. We know the kind of production he's capable of. Jesus, I think he was sold by 400,000 managers after game week 1. So we need to start showing certain people need to start showing a bit of patience. Arsenal have great fixtures. We know from his time at Man City, although there's going to be a certain amount of tax and his data is going to maybe drop off a bit, but he's the main man at Arsenal and he's got threat, he's creative, he's hard-working, so he's actually quite good for the bonus points too. So I think that when we saw like Eddie Nketiah last season, when he scored, he was getting the bonus points, and I think we could see that with Jesus this year. I think it could be a real force.
Yeah, if you look at Arsenal's attack, everything's coming from the left. So whether that is just happenstance from the 2 games because of Crystal Palace, Zaha, and how they set up, fair enough. But Martinelli and Jesus are 2 players that you need in attack. You basically are going against the house, as I mentioned with Haaland in game week 2. If you want to go against the house, that's your choice. Very early on, that's not me, and that's not what I would suggest people do. Go for Martinelli and Jesus. And, if you're already behind, you've missed out on all these points, don't get into this mindset of I'm going to beat the crowd and I'm going to go different and I'm going to beat it. Because you're against a team that is looking sharp, that has the best fixtures or the 3rd best in here. Bournemouth away, Fulham home, Aston Villa home, Man United away, Everton home, Brentford away. It doesn't get better than this. I mean, even if you remove the redness from the Man United and look at that, and you don't want to go away from that. If things change, if we see 2-3 game weeks where the form has dipped, something has changed in the dynamics because of, Europa League and so on and so forth, change. I'm not saying Arsenal is a team for the season, but I'm definitely saying Arsenal is a team until the first wild card, if you're on a game week 9 wild card like many of us. So that's all. I don't think there's much to say on Arsenal attack. If you have Saka, this is the time to keep him, even if he's your 3rd attacker, because again, Bournemouth away, Fulham at home, and Aston Villa at home. I mean, these are amazing next 3. There's a theory of sharing around the goals. If they win 1-0, then one of your attackers is blanked. But this is not the time to sell because Saka could be the one who braces. But look, the sweet spot is, I think, 1 defender, whoever that is. I don't think there's a big difference between Gabriel, Ramsdale, Zinchenko. Zinchenko, you would get the bonus points, and he's done better. But I don't know what happens if Tierney comes in. We talked about it in the last video. White is looking a little bit of a risk. He was taken off early, and so Tomiyasu came in. But if you're looking at Saliba, if you're looking at Gabriel, Zinchenko, Ramsdale, keep them if you have them. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think this is not hindsight talking, but it just, maybe not a lesson, but again, maybe when you start again with a game week 1 team, there's a reason why so many people have Jesus. His fixtures were good. He's highly owned, and maybe you just don't know how risky it is to go against the house, as you mentioned, Pras. So it's not too late to get on him if you don't have him. He's got outstanding fixtures. He looks so good. He's a decent, genuine captain shout this week as well. So the Saka one for me personally is tough, because the reason you went Saka is you thought you valued that 2 million over Martinelli, whereas managers who didn't go for Saka, we thought that we could save 2 million and Martinelli could somewhat cover. Martinelli has done exceptionally well. He looks super threatening, and I think he's going to continue to do well. So I'm not so sure about keeping Saka personally, if you can move on to possibly a different combination of different players from different teams that can upgrade that second player in defense, for example. How about yourself, Hibbo? What would you do with Saka?
It depends. I didn't like the attack and triple up to start, because like if there's a goal, only 2 players can be involved in a goal for one. And I thought that Martinelli represented such value that it kind of nearly rendered Saka a wee bit obsolete, because I had real belief in Jesus to start. I think if I owned Saka and I didn't own Martinelli, I would maybe be looking at keeping Martinelli in and saving the money. But the thing about Saka is he's interchangeable at that price point. Like, you're looking at Mount, you're looking at Luis Diaz, and you can kind of plug in and play these other options who all have really good fixtures at the minute. So I don't know. Like, I would agree with Pras to a certain extent in the fact that if you're looking at Bournemouth up next, Fulham up next, I'm not sure I could sell Saka before that. Even if I had an attack and triple up, I would probably leave it for now, because selling that kind of player before those fixtures is borderline crazy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there is no 8 million midfielder with better fixtures over the next 3. And you have to look at the picks in isolation. So if Saka is your third Arsenal, when you have a defender in Jesus and he's blocking a Martinelli, sell him for Martinelli, because that can help you do other things. But if Saka is your one player, let's say you went for Saka over Jesus, or you went for, I don't think you need to take him out. I don't think so at all. I mean, he's put up almost 180 points last season. He could be on pens. We don't know. Maybe, although Jesus has done so well, he could have them back. All I'm saying is that's not a priority transfer. If you have nothing else to do, fine, look for, go somewhere else. But then you're ending up with not having an Arsenal triple up ahead of these fixtures. So I'm not too big on selling Saka. Of course, don't buy him. I think the ideal triple up is a defender or a goalkeeper plus Martinelli and Jesus.
Yep. Okay, good conversation. Let's move to Man City. And before I do, I want to shout out Delia, who says, can we appreciate Sonaldo's pronunciation of Jesus? Delia, I'm telling you right now, you shouldn't say that, because I'm the worst at pronouncing football names, and I'll get roasted continuously. So I don't know why. I'm really bad at pronouncing footballer names, Hibbo. So thank you for that one good positive comment about my pronunciation.
You're good, man.
I think you do a good job.
Awesome. Okay, so Man City, obviously right now the best team in the league. 2 great, convincing wins. Haaland, just fitting straight into the league. You have to remember, this guy is still very young, and you're joining probably the most up-tempo, high-tempo league in the world. And for him to look so comfortable and the team almost to revolve around him when they attack, it's very convincing. I think Man City have just upgraded to another level with another attacking option, another pattern of play. And I'm very excited to see how far they go in the Champions League this season with Haaland. And just goes to show, credit where credit is due, because Pep, he was handed in 2015-16 when he first came, Pellegrini's team that was not even close to what it is now, but still managed the following year to have an amazing season. And for him to really implement his philosophy into the City team is a great thing to watch, and as a neutral. So exciting times for Man City fans. Main questions about Man City and FPL. Double defense, very popular right now. Is double defense the way to go? I know we've been talking, Pras, about how midfielders, it's hard to predict where the points are going to come from. It's very spread out, the way they score. Gundogan is now an option for many as well. So that just goes to show the different routes to goal that Man City has. So maybe the safe thing to do is, because they're printing out clean sheets, double defense. Cancelo obviously locked. If you don't have him, get on him right now. DS, rotation risk with Stones coming in. And then I have someone in mind to bring in. And then Walker, I know, is very popular and now risen in price at 5.1. And if not defense, you've got Foden, Mahrez, Grealish, as well as Gundogan, as well at 7.5. So maybe with Foden and Mahrez playing so wide now and them having a true striker and Haaland, you can see Gundo and KDB sort of make those into the box runs that we saw throughout Spurs last season. So Man City, obviously, you want to be tripling up on them, but double defense, what do you think, Hibbo? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I'm on double defense at the minute. I have Cancelo and Ruben Diaz. And like my view on this is that at the minute, if you have one Man City defender, so say you have Cancelo, you're effectively not going to benefit from a clean sheet. You need that double, you need that second defender. And the rate with which they keep clean sheets, you said they're printing clean sheets. We look at their fixtures, they're absolutely amazing. They're going to keep clean sheets, and at 6 million, I know you're talking about Walker at 5.1. You're interested in Ake. I think if we compare to, say, Gundogan in the midfield, I'm not sure I trust his minutes, and at 7.5 million, it feels to me, I'm like quite a safe manager, it feels to me like an unnecessary punt right now, because I'm maybe going to look to plug somebody like Luis Diaz into the midfield in that 8 million slot. So it's nearly a risk I don't want to take. And if I'm playing the odds and the odds are stacked in favour of Man City clean sheets, I want two defenders. They make ground on the field, really.
Yeah. So a few thoughts from me. So number one, we have Quicksilver FPL in the chat. So he's basically taken over from Luke to do the weekly predictions on the team. So shout out to him. And he makes a point, which I was also going to say, which is Bernardo Silva looks like he's staying and he's going to be signing a new contract. He's not going to Barcelona. That completely kills off Gundogan for me. Unless something has fundamentally changed and we see that, I don't think you can jump on Gundogan straight away, because that's the slot where he will come in. What that means is if Bernardo Silva plays, KDB becomes even better, because the guy who is then shadowing the striker will be KDB a lot more than if it was Gundogan instead. So that's the first thought. The second thought, in terms of defense and attack, if one of Grealish, Mahrez, or Foden gets injured, then it's a hit-worthy move to go for Man City mid, because we've seen that they are expected to score the most goals in the next 6 game weeks. But until that's the case, you have to sort of take into account that they will share the minutes, share the goals, stay out a little bit wide. There is a trend where we're seeing that they are trying to feed Haaland a little bit more. So I'm skeptical on a City midfielder. I think Foden is still the one to go for if you really wanted to. But that's all that I have to say in terms of City attack. It's Haaland, then De Bruyne, then there's a gap, Foden, and then no one else. I think even Gundogan not there yet. In defense, it's a little bit in flux because of the fact that, look, I think Diaz is nailed, even though he was substituted, I think 62nd minute. It's his spot. He will start. He's not 100% nailed. Nobody at City is, but he is pretty much a name that starts. Cancelo is nailed. Then it comes down to Ake. So you mentioned that he's a left-footed centre-back, but he played Diaz and Stones, in the past. So it's not that he has to have a left-sided centre-back. So I don't think that we can say blanket Ake is going to be nailed. Now, what could happen is Ake could move left back, Cancelo could move right back, and they start Diaz and Stones, which makes Walker less nailed if Ake is looking so good. But I think the summary in defense is Diaz close to 100% or 90 to 100, Cancelo 90 to 100, and then Walker is a punt with, I think, a secure punt where you could say 75 to 80% he should be nailed, and then similar with Ake. Ake is one where he could just lose his spot immediately and you wouldn't sort of see him again. I don't think that's likely to happen with a Walker. So that's essentially it.
All right. I disagree here. I think that Ake is nailed, and I think he's going to be my guy to go to over Walker. In this previous game, Ake, especially in the first half, he looked really threatening on set pieces. Like, as a DS owner, you're very confident because they possess the ball so much that, okay, if they can defend one or two emergency situations, they're going to rack up a clean sheet. But as a DS owner, there's just no attacking threat. And it's like, when you play FPL, you want to have some fun. You want to see your defenders sort of be involved a little bit. I know you're laughing, Pras, but I thought Ake had a pretty solid chance of getting one or two header goals in this game. The thing about Pep is that Pep is all about building up, and same with Arteta, exactly like emulating Pep. His left center back and his right center back have to be a left-footed center back and a right-footed center back in the most optimal situation. A left center back is left-footed because they're going to build up wide, but he also has to be able to switch the ball to the other side just in case things go wrong. By switch, I mean maybe a long cross to someone like Mahrez on the other side. And so you saw Laporte as well as Diaz becoming this ultimate combination last season. When Pep first came to Man City as well, he was lacking that, and he made what's his name, Kolarov into his left center back as well, right? So this is a pattern we've seen time in and time out. Exactly why he brought in Laporte. I think when Laporte returns, which I believe is around September, then he's going to possibly play in the Champions League first over the Premier League. I've seen some interviews over the summer as well about Ake, and Ake was a very expensive signing as well, with the physical attributes to become a great center back in the Premier League, and already a good center back. I just think that Pep is trying to give him a bigger role this year, and he's proven to have a good game this previous game. So I'm willing to take the punt on him. I think
He wanted to sell Ake though.
What's that?
I mean, maybe he didn't want to sell him, but Chelsea wanted Ake. They were close.
Yeah, I know, but he's a Man City player.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you a question. 2 questions. If Stones starts,
Okay.
he's getting closer, right?
Okay.
So you're saying he's going to play instead of Diaz?
I think Stones replaces Diaz during the game, but I don't think
But he's going to
Diaz
start some games in the next 6 game weeks.
I mean, possibly, but I think that it's Ake's spot to lose on the left center back role. I believe in the optimal build-up for Man City will be that left footer and the right footer in center back. So I get it. I get why you're saying, Stones is a great player, right? Stones and Diaz is a great combination as well. But what has Ake done so wrong for him to lose his spot? I don't think I see it yet. When Laporte comes back, the conversation changes for sure.
No, okay. So that was my first question. The problem is we've been there so many times. It's his spot to lose. It's Mahrez's spot to lose. It's Ferran Torres' spot to lose. It's Grealish's spot to lose. And they lose it like the next game week. So I completely get you. There is something there, but I wouldn't overplay it in my head because it's a journey for 6 game weeks. It's not a 2 game week, 3 game week punt. Then you add to the fact that Champions League has started. If you add to the fact that game week 5 is a midweek game week, that's what makes me hesitant. Now, I'm not saying Walker is better, but my next question is, if Walker was also 5.0 and Ake was 5.0, you're still saying Ake is better. It's not a case of you can't get to one if you have a point.
Pras, I had the opportunity to go to Walker seriously last night, but I just believed in Ake over Walker. So I decided I'm going to wait till we'll get to our bus teams. I decided I'm going to wait till the last minute to hear more Perisic news. So I figured that if I'm going to go to another City defender from Diaz, I'm sorry, Hibbo, we're ranting here. I'm gonna go. Ake. I believe in Ake. I think he's gonna do well. I really think he's gonna do well.
Fair enough. I don't think it's a bad pick. I mean, I just wanted to kind of get your conviction, but also if you change your mind and Doherty and Perisic are both starting, don't worry, you're not locked in. It's good to hear that you're thinking, for an Ake type player. I hadn't even thought about him as one of the options.
Hibbo?
My thinking on Man City defense is that I just want that clean sheet. And I'm going to pick the boring player, which is why I picked Ruben Diaz. Now, I know I'm paying the premium, 6 million, but I just don't really want to run that risk. Walker, I think there's a bit less risk, and I do kind of agree with Pras. I do think that if there was one I wouldn't pick, I probably wouldn't pick Ake, if I'm being entirely honest. I know you don't want to hear that.
No, it's against the norm. I feel most people will say, why wouldn't you go for Walker? Why, Walker's heat map, everything is way more attacking, way more up there, but that last game, I just saw Ake with 2 or 3 good set piece threats. So I don't know. Maybe I'm overplaying it in my mind, but you need vibes sometimes, right?
Yeah, that's fair. And what I will say is see that kind of price point in defense, that 5 million. There's options. If it doesn't work out, you can go to Gabriel. If it doesn't work out, you can jump on Doherty if it looks as if he's starting. And structure-wise, I think that's where we're all trying to come to now, whereas kind of we're talking about the meta and FPL that we want, the 5 million defender that we want, the 8 million midfielder, and that's kind of correcting our structure going forward because there's options they plug in and play in both positions,
But
so...
But Hibbo, one thing that plays on my mind is that I don't want to go to those 4.5 options because I want double city defense, which is why if I do go for Ake, I can't go for a guy like Perisic because I need some money in the bank in order to get to possibly a Walker later on or a double transfer. Yeah. But anyways,
No, good talk. Good talk on Man City. And obviously there's Edison. My issue why I didn't go Edison game week 1 is because I like more money on my 10 outfielders. So because we had options off Walker, off, Ake in your case or Diaz, I just wanted to stay there. But I don't think Edison for the first time, even at 5.5 is a decent option. So definitely until game week 8, that's a good option.
In Ake we trust. Let's see what happens. Okay, next game is Chelsea. A lot to dissect here. Brilliant game by Chelsea. I mean, just dominating performance. I think probably first half, I've never seen a team dominate a team of Spurs level so much. Like they basically didn't touch the ball. I think around 70 minutes of Chelsea really, sort of commanding. And unfortunately, as Chelsea fans, they probably feel a little robbed and for good reason, as a neutral, for good reason. But lots to talk about on Chelsea because people are keen on Cucurella now. Chilwell, I think, just trained with the younger division. They've probably got a fire under their belly after this game, and maybe this is where they sort of go crazy. Koulibaly, what an amazing player, right? Just such a great goal. Such a great goal. It's such a gem in the Premier League as a center back. I think he's going to be great. By the way, guys, the guy that replaced Koulibaly in Napoli is a Korean player by the name of Kim Min-jae, and so watch out for him. He's going to come to the Premier League soon, I guarantee it.
Can you tell that to Man United? We need some defenders.
But yeah, he's Koulibaly's replacement in Napoli, and I'm very excited about him. Probably my handle will change from Sonaldo to Kim Min-jae soon, so... one guy I'm excited about. And, on Chelsea, there's the James priority transfer. If you haven't made it, you should probably get on it. Double Chelsea defense, maybe another question there. Keeper hold Mount, flat track bully. So lots to discuss. Where should we start, Pras? Where should we go?
I mean, I'll let Hibbo talk. I mean, you and I have been arguing on Man City for a while. So thoughts on Man City?
No, I thought this game had everything. It had the goals. It had, I think, red cards for both managers at the end, and Cucurella, I think, even had his hair pulled at one point. So Koulibaly had a superb volley to open the scoring from a Cucurella corner, which is, it's interesting to see Cucurella on corners. Reece James made it 2-1. So Reece James started at right centre back, and I really don't like this Reece James right centre back thing. Now, I don't think it damages his appeal in FPL in such a way that it's made out, but I think then when you see him play right wing back, he was almost playing like striker. Like when he scored the goal to make it 2-1, he was in the box. Just before that, he played an amazing cross, and it was a big chance to Havertz. I don't know how Havertz missed. So that's the kind of output you're seeing from James at right wing back. Now, I know some managers in the FPL community were put off James in pre-season because of all the right centre back talk. Don't be. It's good for his X minutes. He's going to play sometimes right centre back in kind of low intensity games, or tactically where he's going to be marking, say, like Son in the game just past. It can change in an instant, and Tuchel can take the leash off him and say, go you and play right wing back now for the last 15, 20 minutes. So I don't think it's something to be wary of. And I think everybody needs Reece James in their team. Now, in terms of Cucurella, he was on the corners, as it says. He took 4 corners. He had 2 successful crosses. He had a shot in the box. He created a chance, which was the assist for Koulibaly. And I think at 5 million, there's a lot they like. But I think as a group, we should probably have a greater discussion about him, because minutes are maybe going to be an issue. I'd just like to know your thoughts, really, because what I think is that Chelsea have pulled out all the stops to buy a really good left wing back here. They've spent 62.5 million to bring him in. They could have brought a backup for Chilwell. I kind of had a feeling in pre-season that Chilwell wasn't going to be entirely ready. We discussed this before the show. And now you're going to have Cucurella going on for the World Cup. You're going to have Ben Chilwell going on for the World Cup. They're both going to want to play. I personally think a Cucurella could play left centre back at times, although that probably depends on whether Fofana comes in or not.
Yeah,
I saw that they had agreed terms, but I don't think that there's been a fee agreed. So I think Cucurella buyers are going to be really buying in the dark because the transfer window's going to be open there. Jump in and give me your thoughts, because I do think he's a bit of an X-Man's risk. And the reason I didn't go say Ben Chilwell to start was there was that X-Man's risk now. So is that something that we're disregarding because Cucurella's £1 million cheaper? Discuss.
what do you think, Andy?
I'm very surprised that you guys think he's a minutes risk. I think the opposite. I think he's nailed to have pretty much start continuously because of the fact that he can play different positions, because of the fact that when Chilwell does come in, he can play that left center back role. And I don't know. He was too good for Tuchel to drop him. A lot of the attack came through to the left, and Chelsea are just so good in every aspect of their team, so that the defending team or the opposing team has to mark all over the pitch, which allows Cucurella to be Cucurella. So I'm very surprised that Hibbo, you think that he's a minutes risk. I actually think the opposite.
Don't get me wrong. I'm very, very keen on Cucurella, and the chances are I've kind of lined up my transfers in such a way that I'm probably going to buy Cucurella and Luis Diaz this week because I'm a fan. I believe in it. But what I would like to see is I would like to see him play the left centre back. There's all this talk about he can play left centre back.
Yeah,
until I see it, until I believe it, until I see the window closing and Fofana not signing, there's too many variables at the minute. And I think he could be very good. I think he could be what we talk about with James and the fact that he has that ability to play dual positions. But I'm going to be taking a leap of faith and jumping kind of in the dark, which I don't mind doing. I don't mind taking the risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess if we had just one more game sample of him playing alongside Chilwell, for example, that'd be a perfect way to determine it. But yeah.
Look, the talk. So there's 3 talking points with Chelsea: Mount, James, and Cucurella. Maybe Sterling at the periphery. But James is a non-discussion. If he's a right centre-back, he's still attacking. And as you mentioned, Hibbo, at 6 million, he's a great centre-back. I mean, if he's playing right wing-back, he should be 8 million or 7.5 million, a Trent price. So the end of discussion. If you want a Trent-type player who is sometimes playing right wing-back, sometimes he plays centre-back like a Koulibaly, fine. For me, this was the reason to go 5 at the back. These are the players I want in my team because they're underpriced and they can get a 15-point haul. In terms of Cucurella, I don't have much to add. I don't think we can jump in on this assumption that left centre-back will be his. Yes, he played there at Brighton, but he's not yet played there, even as a sub for Chelsea. So I think when you're buying Cucurella, have a few things in mind. He's 5 million. So if you're getting a Chilwell-type left wing back for 5 million who plays 3 out of the next 5 games, what's the harm? So you need to change the thinking from that perspective. So he's not a bad pick. You can be a good pick and still be a minutes risk. That's the point. It's almost like a Man City midfielder. So for 5 million, sure. I mean, this is why people love Perisic, or you will see my transfers, why people think that Perisic this is the time to go on him, because he doesn't need to play every minute. And not every position of yours has to be, I'm going to sort of solve it and play only nailed players. We don't have enough information right now to determine that. But in a world where everyone has triple Arsenal, who are well owned, you're not getting any edge. Everyone has triple Liverpool, some combination, whether that's Robertson or Diaz, but triple Liverpool. In a world where people have, one Chelsea defender or a Chelsea player, like whether it's Mount or James, you have to find some ways of getting your edge. So it could backfire. You could go for Cucurella and Chilwell starts the next game and Cucurella starts 1 and then you miss out. Or you could have 3 starts, 4 starts because Chilwell is not yet ready and you're getting a 5 million player playing the Chilwell spot. So it's a high risk, high reward proposition for 5 million. Maybe you want to go there. So there's nothing wrong with going there. Let's have a discussion when we come to the end of this section on out of Walker, Ake, Cucurella, Zinchenko, Doherty, Trippier, who are the ones to go for in this period if you had to pick one. But Cucurella is up there. Not my top 1, but in my top 3.
I think there's 2 additional worries that come with me in terms of Cucurella is I know you don't want to assess double ups on defense. You want to sort of assess it individual as in this player versus another player. But doubling up on Chelsea defense does scare me a bit because as good as they are, they do have some maybe not so sketchy, but not so kind of difficult clean sheet fixtures coming up as well. And also, I one of the questions I have for you and Pras and Hibbo is why are people so? If minutes risk is a big thing for Cucurella as well as Perisic, why are people saying Perisic's ceiling is so much higher than Cucurella's when I think that Cucurella's ceiling is maybe not as high, but very, very high alongside Perisic as well?
Perisic is a god. I mean, he takes corners from both feet. He can play, left forward. If he gets minutes, all you have to solve for Perisic is minutes. That's it. So if you're sitting here and you're saying, okay, Conte's had his 2 games for Sessegnon, they had a bad game against Chelsea. This is the time where managers shake things up, rely on their players. And if you believe that minutes for Perisic is going up, I would take equal number of minutes. I would take Perisic over Cucurella any day.
Fair.
I don't know, Hibbo, what do you think?
What I'll say about Perisic is, what price would Perisic be if he was a midfielder?
Yeah.
With minutes or without? That's the question.
Well, the same minutes. It would probably be somewhere from like 7 to 8 million without clean sheets. And we're getting him now for 5.4 million in defence. He's been classified as a defender, and let's be honest, he's not a defender. And when we look, especially at the left wing back position for Spurs, that position is the one that seems to get closest to goal. Because like when we saw last season, Doherty, whenever he played a left wing back, he was a goal magnet. Like, he was always there and there's about, and he carried a lot of threats. So I think Perisic having a career behind him as being really a wing forward, like, I think he's a scary prospect. If I'm entirely honest, I'm a bit jealous that you're buying him this week because, Pras, you pick your team, and sometimes you look so smug after you've picked your team. And I think you're going to be pretty smug when you pick Perisic this week. Because I think he's a great shout.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I think if we're looking at those fixtures over the next 4, I think the fixtures for Spurs I think they're great. And I think after Chelsea now will be the time where Conte will say, it's time to get Perisic and Doherty in there now. They've had enough bedding on time. Let's go.
Hibbo, the year I've known you, you're pretty. When you have a good team as well, you're kind of bullish there as well, huh?
There can be a bit of arrogance sometimes. I can think that I'm right, but I'm not always right. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I'll put my hand up and I'll admit when I'm wrong. But no, if I feel like I've got a good team, I can be confident. But fair, I wish I could get the Perisic. I wish I could get the Perisic this week, and I don't really think I can.
See, the thing is, it's a very difficult one because people are also selling Perisic for hits because they've become impatient after 2 game weeks of benchings. And it's a little pocket of opportunity that I see. And by the way, I want to emphasize Cucurella is also great. And it's also a pocket of opportunity. If you're reading into what Tuchel is saying, that Chilwell isn't ready, and you're actually backing him to start the next 3 or 4, exceptional value at 5 million. So it's really your reading of what the minutes are over the next 4 or 5 game weeks. And I re-emphasize, it's a difficult next 4 or 5 game weeks because of the midweek game week 5 and the Champions League after game week 6. So you just never know which is the guy who's going to be starting. So my philosophy when I was looking at my transfers, I don't want both Cucurella and Perisic because that's basically you've got 2 risky players. Nothing wrong with it because you have to look at each pick in isolation. But I wanted to sort of go for a Man City second defender just for that little comfort blanket that this guy's going to keep chugging along, probably has better minutes potential and a lower point ceiling, but I was willing to trade that. That was the thinking. But it's the same applies for Doherty, by the way. If we get early news this game week, Spurs is the early fixture. Why not go for Doherty? Maybe he makes the place his own. 4.9 million. Again, game breaker.
Okay, fair.
We didn't discuss Mount, by the way, Andy. I wanted to spend a minute on Mount. So one point on Mount is people are obviously growing tired of the double blank. You didn't get him for Spurs, right? When you had Mount, you were in game week 1, you were making your team. You didn't want Mount for Spurs. You wanted Mount for the fixtures after that. And one of the things that are underappreciated is Chelsea's fixtures from now, as you can see here on the ticker: Leeds away, Leicester home, Southampton away, West Ham home, Fulham away, and Liverpool. Where do you see a clean sheet here? I mean, they could get in all of them. I know they're Chelsea, but what I'm saying is Leeds is an attacking team. Leicester is an attacking team. Southampton, maybe you can say fine. West Ham are an attacking team. Fine, it's a home game. Maybe they can get one there. Fulham is an attacking team, and Liverpool is. So I would say that this is the time to have a Mount or a Chelsea attacker. I get the argument that the above average FPL guys make, that it's not a 2xG team. So why would you want an attacker from this team? Fair enough. But I think you could be a little bit more patient on a Mount. He lost all free kicks in the first game week, but then he got some set pieces back where he took 4 corners, I think, and a couple of free kicks. So he's still in and amongst it. And these are fixtures that are more attacking fixtures. Leeds away, Leicester, you can expect them to score a couple of goals in each of them. Southampton away, again, good fixture. So I don't think you should be jerking your knees, similar to Saka, right? I mean, people will find a way to justify that, yeah, let's get rid of Saka and Mount because we have other options, other more interesting options. But you didn't buy these guys for the first 2 game weeks. You bought them for game week 3, 4, and 5. So why don't you stick it out? And if this is the case that you're getting nervous, then maybe that was not the right call in game week 1, which is fair. You can say that it was a mistake. I don't want to go for a Mount. I don't see why you need to jump off straight away.
Yeah.
Anyone else on pro Mount or anti Mount?
No, I tend to agree with your summary there, and the fact that, like, if you are looking at those fixtures, Leeds, Leicester, Southampton, specifically over the next 3, like, it's, again, a bit like Saka, it's hard to justify selling them right now. It's a bit like Gabriel Jesus, you know, and I think when we look at the kind of start of the season, FPL managers, there's a lot of activity in the transfer market. People have absolutely no patience at all. The like of Jesus blanks and people are selling them straight away. Kane blanks, people selling them straight away. So I think Jesus has shown us that sometimes you should just hold. The fixtures are good. Trust the fact that your judgment in the first place was sound, and back yourself. And I think those fixtures are, especially Leeds, I think they could get at Leeds.
Yeah.
No rush to sell. But at the same time, I know what you're saying about the clean sheets for Chelsea, but I think that these wing backs, especially Reece James,
for sure, they're attackers.
He's such a high ceiling player, and if we're going to look at those fixtures and say those fixtures are more conducive to goals, Reece James has got that goal potential in him. He's got that assist potential in him, and it only takes him 1 game to score 20 points, 18 points, or whatever. So I think that applies more to James and Cucurella. So if anybody doesn't have James, buy him. You know,
Yep.
I mean, the one thing I will say, Pras, is that, yeah, you probably brought in Mount early in game week 1 for this long-term, view of possibly a wild card in 9. But if you are to move off of him for a different, combination of players, maybe this is the time to do it, because if you don't do it now, it's going to be harder to do it next week. It's going to be even harder to do it against Southampton. So just playing devil's advocate here a little bit.
I don't know. We're talking about people selling their assets before Fulham, Bournemouth, and Leeds. I'm not too pro, unless you have nothing else to do and you really, really want to do a particular transfer. But these are elite midfielders. We were talking about this 8 million bracket and good fixtures. These are the good fixtures. I don't see a reason why you have to do it. But look, every team is different. Everyone's mindset is different. Maybe you can't get to a James, for example, and we've been talking up James all this while. So maybe that's the route. So it's very team specific. But I'm saying in isolation, there's nothing wrong with the Mount pick. I mean, he's actually a flat track bully in terms of who he scores points against, at least if you look at last season. So you're selling him before Leeds and Leicester. I mean, Leicester is a good attacking fixture. That's what we saw with Jesus last week, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And I think the Leicester, the goalkeeper combination, I know a lot of people in the FPL community have it, but I think it's a real point of weakness for Leicester as a team, like separate the FPL, because there seemed to be a lack of communication between the goalkeeper and the backline. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if Leicester bought a keeper before the transfer window ended. But attack Leicester, agreed.
So question from Tinesh, who, by the way, shout out to him, a big Newcastle fan. He's asking, would you sell Mount to James, basically in a couple of transfers to fund him? Would you do that?
It's hard to give advice on that without knowing what his defence is. if you know what I mean. Like, surely he isn't in such a position that he's got triple Chelsea, so he needs the sell amount, if you know what I mean, they get on the James. Could there not be another way to get on the James? I think everybody needs to have James.
I see a few teams. To get James, they either need to sell Mount. So Timbers, again, I was having a chat with him before the stream. He's also in this predicament where either he has to downgrade Robertson to get to James or sell Mount, because you're not selling your Arsenal players and Haaland and Cancelo. So you're a little bit stuck in terms of how do you release the funds. I would do it. Simple answer. Even though I've just given a speech for 5 minutes. No, not Sol Robertson, to sell Mount to fund a James, because James will get more points than Mount. Even though he's cheaper, he can get points at both ends of the pitch. And that was my thinking why I went 5 at the back or a bigger at the back, because I felt that, these wing backs can get more points than the 8 million counterpart. The thinking also with Robertson versus Diaz, which has slightly changed when we come to Liverpool. We'll talk about it. But I think James is worth it, and he's a bigger priority than Mount.
Yep. Okay, I think that's good coverage of Chelsea. By the way, shout out TT. He has his own Newcastle only YouTube, so do check that out. Newcastle, big fan over there. So let's do Leeds next. Leeds again, decent fixtures coming up. They do have Chelsea in Game Week 3, but very, very good fixtures from Game Week 5 to 8. I know Aronson and Bamford and Rodrigo, especially Rodrigo, is doing very well. Continuing his preseason form as well. So some options here and there, Harrison as well. But what do you guys think about Leeds and sort of hopping on them early for budget enablers for the upcoming 5 to 8 fixtures? Pras?
Look, I think the first thing is they have Chelsea and Brighton next to, right? So is that a priority? For the other thing is, at least speaking to Leeds fans, their number one or their preferred attacking four is Harrison, Aronson, Sinistera, and Bamford. So Rodrigo isn't part of the front four. He's doing really well, and he could keep his place. Bamford is obviously not fully fit. Sinistera is only just coming back. So not trying to scare people off. But the issue I have with Leeds players is you will go for them. Rodrigo has looked good over the first two. The next two fixtures are difficult. He's going to double blank, and then you'll panic again like we're panicking with Bailey and Neto. This is what happens when we back teams that we don't have full conviction on, because we get the result that we feared, and then we think, oh my God, this was a bad decision and I'm changing. This is why people with Neto and Bailey are panicking now. Now, I think slightly different. So I don't want to almost not bring up Neto and Bailey together, because Neto is still a good pick, I think. Bailey, maybe not, because of the moving to two up front. Go for Rodrigo if you want. But look, he could lose his place. Leeds could not score a single goal in the next two, and I won't be surprised. So that's the issue I have with Leeds.
Hibbo?
I'm not particularly keen. I know Ronald won't be happy to hear me say that, but I think in terms of budget enablers, well, we're not going to look at the defence number one because they're fairly bad at the back. But I think in terms of midfield, there's too many unknown quantities. Yeah. I don't really know much about Aronson, bar what I've seen. He's looked lively, but I agree with kind of Praz's summary where it's a case of really, if you're jumping from, say, like Neto to Aronson, and people will do this. People will, rather than change their structure, they will just look at that slot and say, well, until wildcard 1, instead of changing my structure, I'll just plug in a different 5.5 million mid, and I'll see what output that I get. It could work. If I had to pick one, I would probably go for Rodrigo if I had the cash, because he looks to be playing in a more forward position. How secure his minutes are historically, I suppose you never know if he's potentially going to drop out. But no, for me, as we've just been discussing throughout the show, like, you can basically have a starting 11 which is chocker full of like top 6 players. So it's hard to then kind of justify, well, can I put on like Brentford from Tony or Aronson from Leeds, or we kind of spoiled for choice for pricing this season, I think. So embrace it and fill your team with good players.
Nice.
So do you guys think, are we putting Gross above Rodrigo? Is that fair?
I probably wouldn't.
I think I would. I think I would.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. Only because of the minutes risk and the next two fixtures, which are just not great. So things change basically after a couple of bad fixtures. Teams start to change structure, new players start coming in. That's when things go wrong. Fine pick, but I think not in my top replacements for Bailey.
And both of them, I think rose in price, right? 0.1. Rodrigo 6.1 now, I believe.
He did, yeah. I think a lot of frustrated Rashford owners went for Rodrigo for that double drop and double rise. Again, shout out to Pig because he did the same.
Okay. We're at the 1 hour and 15 mark. Thank you all for tuning in. Do hit the like button as well as subscribe to the FF Scout YouTube channel. It's been a pleasure so far with our good friend Hibbo and obviously my co-host Pras. Next, we'll go to bad fixtures. We have Newcastle, Aston Villa, and Wolves at the bottom, and a lot of people have questions regarding Neto as well as Bailey and what to do with them. And some people have cash and the biggest troll in FPL and Dean as well. So basically, it's time to offload. But how do you offload and where do you go? Do you do a like-for-like transfer? Do you do 2 transfers? Do you take a hit? There's multiple options, and it's very dependent on your team structure as well, because people with 5 at the back can't get to certain options, whereas people with Diaz in the midfield with Neto can do certain options. And then some people have Neto plus Bailey. So what do you do there? And many different ways to go about your transfer. So I think it's going to be very fun moving forward in terms of the shift in the FPL community. But I guess we'll start with Neto and Bailey. I mean, we'll just kind of clump them together and see what we think on what to do with them. And I'll start with you, Hibbo. What would you do? I think you have both, right?
I had both. I sold Bailey last night for Harrison Reed. So before the season started, if somebody told me my first transfer would be Bailey to Harrison Reed, no, I wouldn't have believed you. But how boring. I think that's the well for me. That was the option because I kind of hedged my bets. I had Bailey and Neto because I didn't want to miss out in the Bailey bandwagon, but I didn't really believe in the Bailey bandwagon, so I kind of hedged my bets. But I've also made it harder to get to the kind of 5 million defender, 8 million midfielder, which is requiring a kind of 4-point hit. So I think if people are changing their structure, I would say they could maybe take Bailey down to a 4.5 million mid because Andreas is probably the best 4.5 million mid in terms of minutes, set pieces, etc. Do we necessarily need to have a second kind of bench option that's that strong? I don't think so. So I would drop him right down to 4.5, and then Neto, you then have a bit of money to play with from defence. I would be inclined to take Neto up to an 8 million. Luis Diaz, that's basically going to be my exact moves. I don't really like this whole kind of interchanges and plugging in different 5.5 million mids. I don't. And also don't really like some of these structures where people are going to be reliant on Andreas playing as a starter. I don't know if any of us are on that boat, but he's a stopgap. He might work in a really good fixture in a limited week, but I wouldn't want to be doing it every week.
Yeah, fair.
My perspective is, look, firstly, let's separate Bailey and Neto. Bailey is as good as dead as an option, simply because they've moved to this 2 up top. And they were a little better than in the first game week. He may play, but I think as a starting option where you want him as your 11th player, that's gone. So that's different from Neto, where Wolves are still 4 at the back. Neto looks lively. You still wanted him for the first 6 game weeks. Just because he plays Spurs next game week doesn't mean that he's a bad. He may not get anything in this game week, but his fixtures after that aren't the worst in the world, right? Wolves play Newcastle at home, Bournemouth away, and Southampton at home. I think they're fair fixtures to hold Neto. So one is more urgent and one is less urgent. But for people who have both, that's the issue. You could get rid of both and change the structure. Now, the problem we have in FPL right now is there is no midfielder under 8 million that anyone wants. It's basically Pereira and then 8 million, which is Diaz and Mount and Saka and Kulusevski. So, and even if you filter by XGI and it's 2 game samples, so I'm very wary of using it. But just for illustration, first 2 game weeks, if you filter by XGI under 8 million, you have Gross, you have Rodrigo. No one's in the 7 million bracket. No one. No Grealish, no Rashford, no Zaha. Zaha's, I think, 4th. So that's the dilemma that people are in. That if I need to move my Bailey or Neto up to an 8 million, up, then either I go for one of these guys who are similar, or I basically need to fundamentally restructure. And I, for my team, was of the opinion that I'm basically done faffing around with this price bracket under 8 million. It's Martinelli, Salah, and one other guy. And for me, that one other guy has to be an 8 million mid. That was the thinking. Maybe I should have had it in game week 1. I didn't, but I wanted to correct it. When we'll come to my team, I'll talk about it. But that's basically where I am at. Replace Bailey if you haven't done it already. He's dropped in price yesterday. If you go for any of these guys, Gross, Rodrigo, they're fine. There's no issue with it whatsoever. But do consider what we mentioned earlier, which is compare that to if it's a Bailey, then a 4.5 million defender as well, if you're 4 at the back. If it's a Neto, compare him to a 5 million defender, and then look at him in isolation. So I think if you were to rank it, I would still go defender if it's not for a hit. So basically a double transfer. Second would be Gross, and then Rodrigo. And then Neto is not an immediate sale if you don't have to. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think some people will be protecting their price as well. And I don't really like making transfers that are totally influenced by price. And it was one thing I stepped away from last year. I think you can make better decisions if you consider price less. And I think it helped me. But at the start, I don't like losing that 0.1. So I would be conscious of that. And I know Robbo, maybe Neto, are going to be close to a drop as well. So that's what I know we're going to talk teams at the end. And Bailey, 3 players potentially dropping has kind of pushed me in a direction to make a combination move for -4, if you know what I mean. So something to be conscious. That 0.1 is effectively, I know we say it all the time, is effectively 0.5 increment at this stage, because you then can't reach a certain player, like, you know.
Fair enough. But you need to have conviction as well. Because if you were, and this is the problem with these bottom half teams, right? You don't have conviction that Neto will gain his value back because he might score a brace against Southampton. This is the main issue. If this position was a Martinelli position and he blanked in the first 2 game weeks, I think because of his minutes, we would have said, okay, maybe he's more secure. I'm going to hold on to him, take a punt and continue it. With teams like Wolves and Brighton, Leeds, Brighton, I think not in the same bracket, but Leeds, Wolves, Aston Villa, the way they've been playing, it's just hard to back them and see, how you can continue in that wagon. And the other issue with Neto is you will have to transfer him out before your wild card. It's not somebody who you can keep till game week 9 because he plays Man City and Liverpool in game week 7 or 8. So it's a transfer that you will have to make if you have Neto eventually, unless you're looking to wild card before game week 7.
Yeah, I agree. FPL is a game that's very hard to predict, and the most predictable teams are the best teams in the league. And this year's price points make it possible to have 11 of the top 5 teams in your team as well. So that's sort of the reason why, as well, Bailey to someone like Gross, as you mentioned, is not enticing. Whereas you can get to another Cucurella or Perisic, for example, in the defense.
So, and sorry, Andy, just to add, I think we could go further in depth on these replacements because there's other players as well. Like at Crystal Palace, I think Eze could be a great option. He's looking good. He's playing in the Gallagher position, and Crystal Palace now play Aston Villa at home, which is a good fixture. They have Man City away, but then Brentford at home, Newcastle away, Man United. Toughish, but that's the place where you could go. You could go for a Leicester player in Dewsbury Hall. They have their annual spanking of Southampton, I think, next, isn't it? Yes. So, you could get some points there. So there are other options in that price bracket, but we come back to the fact that what happens if that player blanks in 2 games? Will you panic? I think the answer, unless it's a top 5 team, is that you might well panic.
How about Zaha? I think earlier our friend TT already moved on Zaha. Very interesting. But what do you see eye test on Zaha, Hibbo?
What price is Zaha? He's 7 million?
7.
Yeah.
He's a wee bit kind of prohibitive in terms of his price point. I thought he looked okay against Liverpool, but his goal was effectively like a sucker punch goal on the counter on the break. So it was hard to take too much a read from that. I thought against Arsenal, an attack, I thought Palace were a wee bit poor, if I'm being completely honest with you. So no, I don't think I would go for somebody like Zaha at 7 million in midfield. It gives you an issue then if you don't have the million spare in the bank, if you're looking to then kind of interchange with one of the 8 millions that we're talking about, the Mounts, Sakas, Luis Diaz, etc. It makes it hard to do unless you have that money there. So I would just kind of correct the issue once and for all, rather than kind of moving to say somebody like Zaha, because it could be a bit unpredictable for me anyway. I don't think I would go there.
Fair. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but he's on pens and stuff, so I don't hate it actually. He's looked. Crystal Palace are a good team, so to back their talisman for 7 million, and some people can't get to the 8 million midfielder without hits. Some people are a little bit opposed to hits. So I suppose if you wanted to punt in the 7 million bracket, we don't have Man United players anymore as options, at least for the short term. We don't have Grealish as an option as such. So as good as it gets, I guess, in the 7 million price bracket.
It's a punt. Okay. Captaincy?
Yeah, Hibbo should take it away.
Yeah.
Okay, Hibbo, the stage is yours.
Try my best. So I think really captaincy boils down this week. The 4 options. So we have Mo Salah. I'm going to start with Mo Salah, and he's away at Manchester United. So if we look at his kind of production so far this season, he's got a goal and assist which he picked up in the first game against Fulham. He obviously blanked last time out. 14 FPL points. Now he's had 2 shots on target, but I think quite an interesting stat with Salah's. So far this season, he's created 9 chances. So I think Liverpool and attacker are about a team in transition. I think Darwin coming in, and if we look especially kind of at the Liverpool data, the team data, like Darwin Núñez, in a limited number of minutes, like so far 100 minutes, he's had 5 big chances, which is absolutely huge. And we kind of spoke earlier on about how the dynamic is potentially going to change in the Liverpool team now that Darwin is out. The assumption is that Firmino's going to come in to play. We know what Firmino's like. He's not going to be the kind of player that's going to hog up those big chances. So I think there's going to be less of that Salah who's playing for somebody else or putting on chances for somebody else. And I think we're going to see Salah starting to soak up some of the big chances himself. Now, his record against Man United is quite good. So like in 10 games that he started against United, he has 7 goals and 2 assists for people that are under this kind of thing. But I think from a tactical kind of point of view, we discussed earlier about how United are trying to implement playing out from the back. I don't think there's a worse team that they could face next than Liverpool, because Liverpool like they press up high. So I think it's a good fixture for Salah. I think if we're looking at it, I think he's been kind of unlucky to a certain extent in recent games. And if I had to kind of put a ranking on my players for captaincy this week, I would say that I think I'll captain Salah this week, because solely down to the Man United factor and solely down to how shaky they've looked against Brighton and Brentford. We can look at recent player data, but I think when we look at Salah, we have to consider, look, a 250 to a 300 point player, and that's really what it boils down to. You know what you get with him, you get chance creation, you get penalties, and if we have a team in the ropes, like this is slightly different, but a slightly similar scenario to last season whenever Salah played Man United and Havertz played Chelsea, and everybody thought, oh, historical bias and the fact that, look, we have known for years that Man United are a good team, and they felt like it was an opportunity to take Salah on. I'd be a bit wary of that this week. I'm Captain Sensible. Really, the whole remit of Captain Sensible is to give the solid captaincy advice. It's not to be making punts. It's not to be taking any chances. Over the course of the season, if you pick the sensible captain pick, you'll do okay. So I think Salah would be my number 1. Now, I would say number 2, I would have it at Gabriel Jesus. So like if we're going to look at his first couple of games, he obviously blanked in game week 1, but then he had 2 goals and 2 assists last time out. 21 FPL points in total, and he actually has the best kind of XG data so far. So he's got a non-pen XG tally so far of 2.06. The 3 shots in the box, he's created 3 chances, and one of them was a big chance. So I think Jesus is a real option. I think if we're going to look at Bournemouth as a team, if we're going to rate teams, and again, I don't think we can take too much here read from all the kind of XG data on the team basis so far, because we need to provide context. We need to look and say, well, who did those teams play? Bournemouth obviously played Man City, but Bournemouth have come up from the Championship with one of the best records basically in the Championship. But then you're hearing the noises that Parker's come out with, and Parker has basically said, I'm not happy with my team. I don't really think I can compete at the level. And then you're thinking about Jesus coming up next. Now, it's a very favourable fixture. I would probably consider them to be the weakest team in the Premier League at the minute. I would consider them to be the weakest defence on paper. It's a favourable fixture, but I like to play FPL a certain way. I'm very template, as you know. I don't like to back against the house too often. And I think playing that way is a kind of efficient way for me to play FPL. It's quite boring. I do still think to a certain extent that Jesus is a bit of a punt, despite the good fixture, despite the recent production. And I think I would be happy enough just to own him. Although, where would you put him in terms of EO forecast? You would have him over 100%.
I think Jesus
Because
will be
he's
over 100%. It's the recency bias, right? He just did so well in the last game week. People will just. By the way, you'll see my bus team. My initial instinct was to put it on Jesus, but obviously I hadn't seen the Man United Brentford game by then, so it's still on there. But I hear you. Look, there's two counter arguments to Jesus versus Salah. Number one, on Liverpool themselves, they haven't won a game yet, right? So it's not that they're completely high flying, unlike Arsenal, who are completely high flying. So there's one thing of how do they approach the game. Arsenal teams like, okay, we're on top of it. Jesus is scoring the goals. We're playing a team. So they obviously play in a similar manner to Man City. So when they will attack Bournemouth, it'll be similar. So Arteta has already studied how Pep put all these goals past Bournemouth or penetrated Bournemouth. And so that's sort of, he's looking at that, and that's where Jesus kind of comes into it. I think it's just the fixture, and it's the fact that both are away. If one was home, that would have swung it for me. The fact that both are away, slight issue. And then the other thing with Salah is there's going to be protests at Man United. One goal, if they go down, they will panic, right? Because they know that the crowd are against them, and the players will see it.
That's a good point.
So I'm still divided. I think more likely towards Salah eventually, but I think it's closer because just Arsenal are looking so good right now, and it's a promoted side that one can really target, and both will be over 100%, like you mentioned.
Yeah, well, Jesus is effectively owned by every good manager in the game, I suppose. And anybody that didn't own him last week will own him now. But I would touch maybe on Haaland now. Out of these three options, he's probably the man's risk because he's played 150 minutes so far compared to, like you're talking, Salah's 180 and Kane's 180, although Jesus is 165. He has 2 goals and an assist so far, 18 FPL points. He has a non-paying XG of 1.02 and an XA of 0.42. 3 shots on target. Just a one chance created, and one of them was a big chance, and it was for Gundogan the week just passed. So obviously we have no kind of team against that. And what I will say about Haaland is, I think there was a bit of narrative after the weekend where there's a bit of narrative about Haaland generally where it's like Haaland's going to struggle to play against low block teams. I think that's just narrative because if we look at the game at the weekend, he got the assist for Gundogan, which was good link play. I do think it is tighter. I do think there's an element of truth to it, but I do think it can be narrative that's over egg. Like, I do think he got the assist. It was great link up play by Gundogan. Foden should have put him on a plate. If Foden puts him on a plate, he's got a double-digit haul, and nobody's talking narrative. Nobody's talking about low block defenses, and that's the way it is. He had a great chance kind of late on, where he kind of half scuffed it. Now, if we're going to get on the fixtures, we know Mahir's a big fan of Newcastle defence. Mm-hmm. They were very improved when we look at kind of from January last season. So we're not even going to look at this kind of shorter term sample. If we look at kind of January last season, Newcastle are up with the best defences in the division in terms of kind of XGC, probably top 5 or 6. So are they a team that we necessarily want to be taking on with the like of a Haaland? And I'm going to say at this point, not really when we have the like of Salah as an option against United, when we have a like of Jesus, he's a wee bit further down the pecking order. I think Kane's flying under the radar a bit, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
And I think Spurs players in general are flying under the radar because they had these games. We make decisions as FPL managers. We're obviously constrained by budget, and we can obviously only have a certain number of premiums. So we'll create narratives ourselves about why we can't have this player in our team. And really, I think if we're looking at Kane so far, only 1 goal, 10 FPL points. But I think he's looked decent. He's 3 shots on target. He's created 5 chances, which we know this is Kane's thing. He's kind of got dual avenues to points in the fact that he can A, score goals, and B, kind of create chances. If we're looking at his record against Wolves and 6 starts, he's just 3 goals and 0 assists, although some people don't really put any kind of weight in this. So what I would say is, I think Kane's a wee bit underrated. I would have him and Haaland maybe kind of third and fourth in a tie. Maybe Kane slightly ahead of Haaland actually, and Salah's number one and Jesus is number two. I'm fairly certain on Salah this week.
Yeah, Hibbo, I think
I'm interested in your thoughts.
yeah, I don't think I would go to Kane. I'm not convinced by Spurs at this moment in time. Their midfield on paper, Højbjerg and Bentancur are pretty solid, midfield trio or double pivot in the Premier League. But one of the patterns I've been noticing with Spurs is they can't get the ball up. Like they can't build up through the middle, and Wolves are going to sit back. And if they're not able to get that early look, when Spurs end up scoring the first goal, whether that be towards the end of the first half or the second half, they go on a goal rage and can score 3 or 4. But when they can't get that first goal, they really struggle to break down teams. So when you have the option of Salah and Jesus, why would you go there, in my opinion? And, Pras mentioned that, Liverpool aren't showing their best game right now. Yes, 2 ties. But I guess the sort of semi-counter to that is we always talk about game state, right? How a game's going while the game's going on. But sort of pre-game state right now is Liverpool need a win. They really need to win and get going, and this is the perfect game to get it going. When on the opposite end of the spectrum, Manchester United are just turmoil right now. Locker room's broken. There's no spirit. There's no philosophy. Ronaldo's trying to leave. Who knows what's going on over there? So I do get that there's protests and worries about that, but I wouldn't be too. I think the game's going to go on. So I just fancy Salah to do really well against this game. Plus, last year I didn't have Salah in Gameweek 9, so I don't want that scenario to come back again.
You have to forget about the past, about past events and what happened. And look, I'm actually much bigger on Spurs. As it turns out, people don't have Spurs. Obviously, they didn't listen. They went Kane and they switched to Haaland, and now they don't have Kane. But there are people who have backed against Salah and went Son, or backed or continued to back Kane and didn't go Haaland, captain the Spurs player. I don't think you can take so much out of this Chelsea game just because they look bad. That's a London derby, completely different. Chelsea can nullify Man City in a Champions League final. They can nullify anyone. It's a different team. They smashed Southampton. They were top of the table, remember, Spurs, after game week 1, because they scored 4 goals past them. They will score 3 or 4 goals against Wolves. So can you guarantee that? No one can guarantee, but will Liverpool score 3 or 4? Maybe. But I think just on who you back as the home team, Spurs are at home. If you have a Son or Kane, you captain Son or Kane. And by definition, you may not have Salah or Haaland as well if you're not in a premium. So go for them, back them. I think this was the fixture. When we were looking at the captaincy matrix, this was the week, this and game week 6 as the weeks where Salah and Haaland are away. Spurs are at home. Spurs batter teams at home. Wolves are not playing a 5 at the back. Maybe they switch, but so far they haven't shown the signs. What you've seen so far is teams are playing 5 at the back to counter Conte. That's what Southampton did game week 1. Obviously, Chelsea always do that. They'll come up against a 4 at the back. I'm expecting them to smash them. And why would you not consider a Son or Kane more?
Pras, if you knew that Perisic was guaranteed 90 minutes to start, would you captain him this week?
I would captain him.
Wow, because he's a god.
I mean, look, he'd be an attacker with a clean sheet potential. Forget about EO and stuff. I'm talking in isolation. If I was to pick one player who would be the king of the game week, I would say he would be one of them. Doesn't mean Salah wouldn't be. I know he was laughing because he knows I won't go against Salah's EO, but that's a different question. We're answering in isolation. I know you're laughing.
For sure.
So, but I think Spurs players are good players. I think we're ignoring them because no one owns them. People who have them have moved away, but people should captain them.
I think we're ignoring Spurs players because a different conversation has come up by the end of the game week where now our teams have to move in a certain direction where we're thinking, well, look, we need to get rid of Bailey, we have to get rid of Neto, we maybe need to get the 8 million. I think if you have a perfect team like our friend Abdul, who secondly always has a perfect team, somebody like that could possibly look at making like a Haaland to Kane move this week because the fixtures are better for Kane, the minutes are better for Kane. Haaland, all right, that is a bit of narrative, but I think at the same time, we're going to get into the stage where games are going to get chock-a-block, where he's going to be playing 2 and 3 times a week. And the noises that Pep made was that Haaland isn't really the player to do that. So like, I don't think it's the worst move in the world. And I think if we were in a better position team-wise, more people would be making that aggressive play, because I think pre-season people looked at penciling on Kane in for Haaland in game week 3.
Yeah. I mean, if he wasn't playing Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest at home in the next 2 after that, because then it becomes like a hokey-cokey. You'll have to get Haaland back as well. So that makes it a little bit complicated. But look, I hear you. I just basically wanted to end it to say that Spurs are good. I mean, they're at home. They're playing Wolves, who are bottom quartile XG conceded team from second half of last season. So I think it's a fair shout, and back it. Don't get scared of Salazio.
Gents, we are 1 hour 40 minutes and probably one of the longest ones. So
let's go to teams.
Yeah, let's go to bus teams right about now. Okay, so I have Hibbo's team up here first. Hibbo has a 5-3-2 formation, Ward in goal, Sanchez on the bench, interesting. Defense, he's got Cancelo, Diaz, Trent, Robertson, and James. In the midfield, he has Salah, captain, Neto, and Martinelli. And up top, he's got Haaland and Jesus. This is transfers already done or no transfers?
This is one transfer done. So with this, I've went Bailey to Harrison Reed. So I've got 0.5 million in the bank. I've got one transfer left. So I think really the plan for me is I'm going to go Rabo to Cucurella, 5 million, and I'm going to go for Neto to Luis Diaz, 8 million mad. I'm undecided in my goalkeeper. Like, you asked me for a bus team, so I had to give you a bus team, but I could put Sanchez back in. I'm pretty decided on my captain. I think that's the way I'll be going for this week. Vice will be on Jesus.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that. So you're looking to take the hit, is it?
Oh, I'm definitely going to take that.
Which is
for the reasons that I stated earlier, and the fact that I can't keep myself in a position where 3 of my players are going to be dropping in price. Not at this early stage. I don't mind paying 4 points because I've had a decent start to get myself back the head of the queue in terms of my team being fresh again, and then hopefully no kind of further issues crop up in the future weeks. So I don't mind taking the hit. Cucurella will be a bit of a punt. The only other option I could maybe go for there is Doherty, but he's also got risk right now. I could go Gabriel of Arsenal, but I don't really want to go there either. I would like to have a kind of exciting defender. I like to build my team around exciting defenders, and Ruben Diaz is kind of the way it goes, because it makes the game fun to watch if you've got Reece James, Cancelo, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Same with you with Perisic. It makes the game fun. And I think a big adjustment in the FPL in the last couple of years is the fact that we have wing-backs, and wing-backs are obviously classified as defenders, but I think people have struggled to change their mentality that back at the back is good, back at the back is optimal. And I think you can have exciting defenders and be big at the back at the same time that are good to watch. So Cucurella and Luis Diaz for a -4 on that team.
So nice. I noticed you don't have an Arsenal defender. So you talked about Gabriel or Saliba. Are you not? I mean, you could even release some funds and get an Arsenal third player. Is that not because you're not going to go Saka? So are you not planning to have a third Arsenal at all?
Not for now. I could do it, but there's just so many options at the minute, and I can't fit them all in. Like my team compared to your team, you've obviously got Ramsdale and Nets. I went Sanchez and Ward because I wanted to save them 0.5 million. So after the first week, I wanted your Ramsdale, and after game week 2, I was happy enough with my Sanchez. So I don't know. I think come wildcard 1, I'll freshen it up a wee bit, but I'll not buy an Arsenal defender this week, I don't think.
Fair enough. I mean, the thinking is the congested fixtures. I'm going to try and talk you into it later, but I think it's fair. The structure makes sense. Your thoughts on Diaz versus Robertson? So are you doing it because you think Diaz is going to score more points, or it's the fact that you have 5 other better defenders to pick, or 5 other defenders that you would pick instead?
I think in terms of defense, I think there's alternate options to Robertson that I can go to, but in midfield I don't really have many alternatives. As you said, there's basically a gap between the 8 million mids right down to basically Andreas. So I don't want to keep changing that slot. I want to correct that. I probably, at the start of the season, I would have had Luis Diaz and Robertson pretty even. I'm not sure if I do anymore. I think Diaz is a really good pick. And I think if I look at game week 1, it could have been so different because he had the inside of the post. Robertson, he had a goal ruled out for offside. And on another day, like we talk about variance, on another day, he's maybe scoring 14, 15 points there. So I don't know. I think he's looking like a really good pick. So I'm happy as a pick, and I'm happy as for structural reasons as opposed to make those changes.
Nice.
You're not happy about me going for Cucurella, but we can talk on WhatsApp.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I've done the same thing. I've done the same thing. So when we come to my team, I can talk about it. But my thinking is people will fixate in the hit that you're taking a hit to go Robertson to Diaz when you were saying all preseason that, you know, my third Liverpool spot is sacrosanct. I'm going to keep it for 8 game weeks. It's my glue guy. But the problem is things have changed in the first 2 game weeks. And the couple of things that have changed is the Thiago injury, the defensive injuries. Now, when Gomez comes back, which he will in the next game, they're fine. I think defensively, there's no problem. I think the big change is Nunes going out of the picture. And that essentially means that Firmino is there to feed the 2 guys, which is Salah and Diaz. So we're not expecting Salah types potential, but that basically ups how much they need him, which is X minutes, and his expected involvement, because when Salah will feed the ball in, it won't be for Nunes, it'll be for Diaz or Robertson. So both are, for me, fine options. If you come to my team, Sonaldo, I can basically explain. So what I have done is I've sold Diaz, so Diaz with the S from Man City, as well as Robertson, and I've sold Bailey, and I got in Diaz with the Z from Liverpool, and I've got Walker, and I've got Perisic. And the thinking was, instead of a Gross or a Rodrigo, I wanted a Perisic punt, because I think other people with a different structure will have Robertson instead of Perisic, and then we'll go for a Gross or a Rodrigo or whoever else. That's just not what I wanted to do. So I'm answering the question, do I think Perisic outscores Gross in the next 6 game weeks by 4 points? That's why I decided, yes, that's the answer. And that's why I went for it. And it's also the fact that if I look to do future transfers, where am I most excited? We've just talked about the 8 million price bracket, and everything below that, I'm not excited. I'm excited about owning Trippier after game week 5. I'm excited about maybe moving Perisic to a Doherty if he becomes nailed in the future. So there's a lot more that I can do in that, or even a Cucurella that I don't have yet. There's a lot more that I want to do in that space. So that's why I wanted to have the 5 defenders, and they all are fine. So I don't need to have a Robertson. If I could have 6 at the back, I would probably have Robertson instead of Diaz and avoid the hit, but I can't have 6 at the back. That's the thinking, and that's why we've sort of gone for this structure. Personally, I don't think there's a massive difference between Diaz and Robertson, even though there has been a slight change. I think both will do very well, and both are good players to own. So this is not about, oh my God, Robertson is rubbish. Oh my God, Diaz is going to match Salah. It's about both are good picks. There's a slight uptick in Diaz. There's a slight impact on Robertson. And also now we have emerging 5 million defenders that can match or at least do better than what we thought when we originally went in.
Nice.
And I already did my moves yesterday because I couldn't afford it. I had Bailey dropped, which he did, because I have obviously gone for none of the 5.0 defenders. I've gone for Walker, which was 5.1, and Perisic, which was 5.4. So that's essentially why I had to go yesterday.
Nice. Shall we go to mine?
Sure. Everyone wants to find out if you're on the same team again, and you tell them it's not the case.
No.
I'm beating you 2 boys, aren't I? I'm ahead of you already on points.
Are you? I have.
Yeah, but like last season.
I purposely didn't add the plug that Hibbo has a 2K finish last season and has 3 top 10Ks, but here you go. Yes, he's ahead. He went for Sanchez, who outscored Ramsdale last game week, so he's ahead of us by a couple of points.
Yeah, it's Hibbo and Pras, by the way, guys, have certainly a rivalry that I've noticed, but friendly for sure. So may the best
it's only
man win.
become a rivalry because he overtook me after years last season. So it's starting to, it's a bit like
um,
Very good. Very good.
yeah. So, I was texting Pras a couple days ago, and we were like, we have to go different routes and different directions, and we didn't reveal our teams to each other, and we sort of ended up on the same thing, a -4 to optimize this team. And this is sort of what I was going through in my mind. Is I had Bailey, and I was thinking about what options I could get to with Bailey. And there's Gross, there's maybe a 6.0 I can get, or 5.5 or 4.5 downgrade, and there's just nobody I wanted to get to. So then if I look at my starting 11, I have to play this player every single week unless it's Andreas or Archer, so be it, right? So as Pras mentioned, the next best thing is the 7 million, Zaha, maybe Grealish. Gundogan came into the fold. And then I was thinking about Foden and all the 8 million brackets. And out of all of them, who's the best guy? It's probably Luis Diaz. I still think that if I had an opportunity to hold on to Robertson, I would hold on to Robertson because Robertson, I think, could outscore Diaz in the next 6 game weeks. There's a reason why I punted on him, or I went for him over Diaz. And last season when I owned him, I've had only good memories with him. And he's just a continuous points machine, right? So it's not about who the better player is between Robertson and Diaz. It's about what this move from Robertson to Diaz does structurally, because then I'm set on a starting 11 that comes from the best teams in the league. And even then, I could still get a double defense instead of Perisic. I could go for Cucurella, for example. This is my first choice option, and every single game week, whoever they play, you're going into it with a boatload of confidence because of the teams they play for. So, Ake is sort of the punt, I guess, that I'm going for. I'm very convinced that it's a decent shout. We'll see what happens, but. Right now, my issue is whether I'm going to go for Perisic or Ake, or I'm going to go Cucurella, Ake, or possibly go crazy and go Perisic and Cucurella and drop the double city defense as my three options. I was not sold on Walker, and that's why I decided to just wait for more news. I know I'm missing out on probably more than point two, because if Walker continues to do well, then people are going to hop on him and maybe he continues to rise in price, and I'm aware of that. I'm aware I lost point one on Bailey as well, but I just wanted to wait it out and see, because I couldn't decide between Perisic and Cucurella in the end.
Nice. So to clarify, you've not made any transfers. I've made all three, and Hibbo has made one of his three. So, but you guys will monitor, and you're holding off to monitor Perisic's potential start. I was of the opinion that I'll be locked out of these moves. So if Perisic is not starting, then I have Andreas Pereira, who plays Brentford at home. So that was fine.
Yep. Yeah, and this hit is fine because this hit allows me to not bank on just this game week, but the next 6 game weeks. So I like it moving forward, and I'm sure stuff will happen in the next few. But okay, great stream, 1 hour and 53 minutes. So probably the longest one we've done. But that was great, Hibbo. I'm sure we'll have you on multiple times this season. Really appreciate your time. And Hibbo is now a writer for FF Scout, as Pras mentioned in the earlier part of the stream. So watch out for his articles on his Twitter handle, as well as FF Scout, Fantasy Football Scout website. And we'll be back next week with another special guest. Hibbo, how was it? Final thoughts from you, and then Pras.
I really enjoyed the stream. It was good to finally meet you two boys face to face.
Yeah, good to have you, man. We will definitely do this again, and I think nothing else to add. We've done a long stream here. Good luck to people. This is a key week. 2 transfers. Don't waste them. Make sure you have a view of what an ideal. We've talked about in the past. What is an ideal wildcard if you were to wildcard today for the next 12 game weeks? And if it's a Diaz instead of a Robertson, if it's a James instead of a Mount, don't be afraid to do that. Don't be a slave to your game week 1 decisions. Have a view of what a game week 3 wildcard would look like.
By the way, sorry, we had 2 live chat, or what's it called?
Super chats.
Super chats, yeah. We should probably get on them, right?
Go on then. What was it?
I think one of them was from Nihal, Robbo to Perisic, and Neto to Gundogan or Foden, worth -4.
Well, that's what we're doing. Except for Foden, we're going Diaz, which he can do as well.
So-
But if he prefers Foden, then fine.
Yep, fair.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you see the other one? I can't see the other one.
No, I think the other one was just a thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Okay, guys, see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.